Hello. Um, it's been a minute. This video's been a little bit long overdue. Granted, nowhere near as large as my previous gap in recordings. But I have in fact finished the Gelgoog along with another kit that I'll get to another time. But it's done. And I'm gonna give you my initial overall impressions. Let me get these in the frame here. Specifically, this is Sugai's Gelgoog, by the way. In case you were wondering. But yeah, I'll get my initial just kind of overall thoughts just right out of the way. This is a really, really fun kit. There's not a lot of work you really need to do to it. I think panel lining works really well on it. I was surprised. Maybe it was just my bad luck with some of the other plastics in the line, but this one took panel lining pretty well. Uh, it's pretty screen accurate too. There isn't really any real paint color correction you need to do, minus a few spots I'll point out. They're very, very minimal, so if you want to do them, you totally can. But we'll just kind of look at some things here. Firstly, the manual. Uh, Unlike a lot of the Armored Core manuals I've covered, this is a Bandai manual, and it's a fair high grade kit, and it's not particularly exciting. It does give you some color and some cool action poses and things like that, but honestly, it just kind of is what it is. There's nothing really interesting lore-wise. I mean, I think you'll have to excuse me, doing this with one hand is a little tricky. There may be a lore bit in here. You'll forgive me. A lot of color, though. You get, like, color for the first half, and then the rest is black and white. That's just a thing. I don't know, nowadays. Guess not. But there's some info. Painting guide, if you so desire. This kit you can see some of the color correction there, that little yellow, right there, that little yellow nub, that's not yellow on the actual kit. Honestly, you would never really notice that. There's that. The thruster bells on one part you can also kind of see, it's hard to see. Those are supposed to be painted white. They're not on the kit, they're just a gray piece. And I think there's like a couple other, like, just small, really, like, tiny things like that. And honestly, you would never know. I didn't realize until I actually took a hard look at the animation model. The only other major difference between this and the animation model that I want to highlight is the face. The face on the model kit is actually more detailed. It's got these nice little details for what might be sensors. It's weird. As you may know, this certainly doesn't look like a regular Gelgoog. In fact, this is what one might describe as a non-standard Gelgoog. I touched on this pretty much as much as I kind of could casually in the initial kind of backlog video. This is an alternate Gquuuuuux. This is from Gquuuuuux. It's the high-grade Gquuuuuux kit. And Gquuuuuux is in an alternate timeline from the main Universal Century timeline. And so, in this timeline, instead of developing the regular MS-14 Gelgoog, which is very Xeon looking with the mono eye and everything, they made this thing, which is a reverse-engineered kind of mass-production mobile suit based on the captured RX-78 Gundam. And you're probably thinking to yourself, those of you who are maybe familiar with with Gundam in general, is like, oh, that thing looks like a gym. It really does. It really does. As I mentioned before in the initial kind of overview of this kit, when I unboxed it, there is some elements of the original Gelgoog in here, namely the little snout on the face. That's, I mean, as much as you can get. The color scheme certainly is very gym-esque, very Federation looking. However, this is not the standard Xeon military use Gelgoog. This is a custom color scheme of this particular pilot in the anime. Her companion has a differently but similarly AUG/Federation flavored color scheme on her Gelgoog. And then the main Xeon Gelgoogs that you see in the anime are actually colored. They have the same color palette as the original Gelgoog, that kind of gray and green, very Xeon color palette. This does not. The other thing too is you may notice this face is just it's just a solid blue piece. The manual, I'm assuming maybe this was either prototype or maybe at some point they planned on using a sticker because it looks almost holographic. In the anime, it's fluorescent, or at least it seems to emit light like the gym in the original, most Gundam anime, which leads me to be even more confused as to why this wasn't a translucent piece. However, um, it looks good. I was actually really surprised. Initially I tried. You might notice I did some black panel lining for the little sensor pieces there. Um, I initially did a light gray to make it look like they were illuminated, and that actually looked pretty okay too. But I think this looks better. It's also what they chose to do on the official paint scheme. But I think you could do the light gray and kind of go for a faux illumination effect. It looked pretty good. So, what are you exactly getting in this kit? Well, more or less what you see is what you get, and that includes the mobile suit. You get a separate hand here that has the grappling wire that is on a posable wire, and you get two beam saber blades. We'll explain why in a minute. And you get an open hand. This one still has a smudge on it from the panel lining. I apologize. But, yeah, there is some nice bits of detail. It's a little hard to see. Some very nice detail on this hand, I will say. That seems to be a pretty common theme in the Gquuuuuux line, is surprisingly detailed hands. Again, as I also touched on in the unboxing, this does carry over. There is still kind of a way you can distinguish the fact that this is a Xeon mobile suit design, and the fact that mainly you might notice a lot of like just exposed fuel tanks. Like there's these large ones on the lower leg, and then these smaller ones up here that actually move with this thruster, which is kind of neat. The other really nice thing is all the main weaponry can be stored on the mobile suit at once. The beam saber and two, what they're calling beam rifles. They do definitely behave like rifles in the anime, but they're visually very much an homage to the Jim's beam spray gun. These little bits up here, I'm assuming are some sort of sensors. They're not the beam sabers. In fact, the one beam saber is in that little holster there, which we will touch on in a second. But it's really nice that you can just carry most of this thing's accessories on this little harness. So to kind of demonstrate, I'm going to lay it down, because again, it's a little tricky to do this one-handed, but these are just simply clipped on. So here's one. Oh, there's one of those off. Grab the other one. They're just friction fit on. And then the beam saber just slides in. A little bit tricky to get out. It's very secure. Oh, come on. Come on. Again, a little tricky to do one-handed, but you'll have to forgive me. I'm going to swap hands here. There we go. So that's out. I'll just lay that down for a sec, just so I can focus on the accessories. The beam saber, also pretty nicely detailed, as most of these seem to be in these Gquuuuuux kits. You get some nice bits of panel lining on the beam saber, which is pretty cool. And you'll notice there's a hole in both ends. Well, that is because this is specifically, as you can see here, a model kit gimmick. It's not, I guess it's not canon, it's not in the anime, but as an homage, whoa, that went flying, you do get two beam saber blades. I apologize, I'm going to attempt to attach these, whoop, there's my finger, as best I can with one hand. So you get the normal configuration, right, where you can plug the one blade in, and then you can plug, as an homage to the original Gelgoog, you can plug in the second blade to the end to get a sort of configuration. Again, I apologize. Very difficult to do this one-handed. You get a configuration that resembles the original Gelgoog's Beam Naginata, albeit very Federation-esque looking. I wish it would really just focus. But the beam saber effects are very nice. The effect parts in this series in line of high-grade kits, it's kind of hard to tell because it certainly just does not want to focus. The beam saber effect parts in these are very, like, a very, very vibrant magenta and translucent. Again, it really, really is not happy. Anyway, it's kind of hard to tell on camera, but they are very bright magenta, and there is it's very faint. Very, very faint, but I believe there is a slight metallic fleck in these. You can barely make it out on camera. But that's really cool. Up close, here is one of the beam rifles, and I say in air quotes, these are very much more reminiscent of the pistol-like beam spray guns the original Gyms would carry. It's even got like almost what looks like a hammer, which is very odd. It's pretty cool. I like the design of these actually a lot. It's got this sort of quad polygonal barrel, which I think is pretty cool. So as I mentioned though, with the Gelgoog itself, what you see is literally what you get. Articulation's pretty good. Single jointed elbows, single jointed knees, but very, very, very well articulated stuff. Another really interesting feature is that, ooh dear. Another really interesting feature is that you can see there's like some very intentional cuts in the geometry of this mobile suit. And that's both present on the physical, like, CG model for the anime, as well as the model kit. Purpose being is that if you were... It feels really intentional with the construction of this kit, that I think they were aware that somebody is going to want to paint this in the original, the Xeon military colors, because they don't have a kit of that yet. So, and I say yet, there's probably going to be some sort of P-Bandai nonsense that's like, you get basically this same kit, but in green. But if you were to want to paint this, you can really easily disassemble it and break it down into components where the colors, the paint scheme kind of aligns and matches up. So if you want to do that, it's very easy to do so. I would say that would be a very easy paint scheme to do as well, because it's just solid colors. But yeah, let me kind of demonstrate here. The arm... Oh, by the way, these shield pieces are just attached. They're a separate piece. Not sure why. Arm is just on a single cantilever style joint. Something just fell off, but that's okay. You get about to there. That's fine. A lot of mobility in the shoulder here. Lots and lots of mobility. So, and the neck is on a double joint. So you have the joint inside the head, and then the joint... Man, the backpack just really wants to fall apart. And rotation and such. I like that the head is, again, very slightly asymmetric. You got the head Vulcans on one side. On those ball joints is where these fun little bits, these little boosters, are attached. I did have to glue these. Not because they didn't hold together, but the seam along the middle of them, it just really, I'm so sorry. It just really did not want to hold together. It just kept having that seam. So I glued the seam together. But none of these really move. They're in place, but they're just attached by a hinge and a ball joint. So you can move those however you would like. On the legs, as I mentioned before, you get a single jointed knee. Or sorry, wait, is this? You'll have to forgive me. I don't quite recall the legs full construction here. But the knee... It is a double jointed knee, but you do get some decent mobility, and those thrusters can move out of the way. The thrusters themselves, as you saw, are also just, they can move up and down in here, and this little tank moves with them, which is pretty cool. Just some really neat little details. And then I did modify one thing, and that is this gray joint piece here, this cantilevered part that the heel is connected, or the foot is connected to. I modified the inside of that so I could get a bit more inward angle. because the kit out of the box does not give you a lot of that. It's weirdly only outward. And I thought, oh, that must be a mistake. I built that wrong. No, that's just how it is. So what I did is I just, I can't really disassemble the leg here on camera to show you, but I cut off part of the stopper section to make it so that, oh, the leg just popped off. Okay. To make it so that this could move a little bit more efficiently, get a bit more inward angle for like kind of an A stance. It's not focusing. This is a tricky kit to film because of its color. That sounds weird. But yeah, all in all, it's a pretty fantastic little kit. Especially for a high grade. I think the Gquuuuuux high grade line has pretty thoroughly impressed me. I'm going to attempt to reattach the foot with one hand because, oh dear, get in there. Is that in? Okay. Anyway, I want to reattach the foot here just so I can get it back into more of a neutral standing pose here, just for some size comparisons. Yeah, these high grade kits are a little bit more tricky to film because I'm not filming them in pieces. But I really, really do like this kit. I think this is, believe it or not, even compared to the other kit I've built, which I'll talk about later, I think this is my favorite kit in the Gquuuuuux lineup, and I've built a good chunk of it already. I'm going to apologize. I'm going to pull this off camera and just kind of stabilize it so it can stand upright. I would really appreciate it if this thing would cooperate. I think that's the best I'm gonna get. It's just kind of this awkward standing pose here. But it's a pretty awesome little kit. I think this is my favorite of the Gquuuuuux kits so far. I'm going to move this out of the way. And for the purpose, just so you can get an idea, if you have more of the, if you're interested in getting these, if you have any idea size-wise, here it is with its opponents. Here is the HG Gquuuuuux, and here is the HG Red Gundam. You can see the Gelgoog's right in the middle. You can definitely tell that while this is, you know, a very Federation-esque design, it still has Zeon-esque design components that are more akin to what you see in the Gquuuuuux with these like legs that look like they were almost built around these thrusters and like exposed fuel tanks. But you can also really tell that it's like a blend of those two designs because the Federation type engineering is also still sort of present here. And it's like, it does a really good job visually, in my mind, communicating Ikuto Yamashita's like intentions with this design, in the sense that you can tell that this guy is a reverse engineered iteration of this guy, and that they're still using Zeon technology that's available to them to best replicate this guy. But yeah, you can see that the Gelgoog's kind of in the middle. The Gquuuuuux is a little bit taller, and so is the Red Gundam, but it's a pretty average sized MS. In fact, if we go to the spec sheet, it claims this is where things get a little strange. And I swear I'm not doing this necessarily wrong. It says that this is exactly 18 meters, including the antenna. Well, I don't have the manual on me, but the Gquuuuuux is supposed to be exactly 18 meters as well, along with this guy, who's supposed to be exactly 18 meters. And it's very clearly slightly shorter than both of them. But nonetheless, that shouldn't deter you in any way. This is a phenomenal kit. Any of the Gelgoogs, as I'm sure there will be a third and maybe a fourth color variation at some point, because Bandai. Oh, I almost forgot to mention the sticker. It comes with a single sticker, a single marking sticker, and it is difficult to focus on, both in real life and on camera. It's just that little witch. The text, it's a little hard to read, but it just says, and death will have no domain. Or, sorry, and death shall have no domain. I'm reading it. It's very fine print. Sticker, accurate to the anime. Yeah, I just don't really have enough good things to say about this kit. It's very fun, it's very dynamic, you get a lot of fun accessories, well, not a lot, but you get fun accessories and the accessories you want. I love the head sculpt. I love the little tri-camera configuration. Something I should note, the head is more detailed than what it is in the anime. I did mention that. I should finish that thought. Namely, just the eye sensors. In the anime, which, for whatever reason, I hate technology. In the anime, these are just circles. Whereas this, they actually bothered to add a little bit more detail. Oh, dear. So, it's a nice upgrade. It reminds me a lot of one of my other favorite mobile suits in the Gundam franchise in general, the Ashamar. If you're not familiar with it, I wish I still had my high grade Ashamar. I don't know where it is. Probably at my parents' house. But I do have the HG Ashamar and I've built it. It's one of my favorite kits. It's the mobile suit that from Zeta Gundam that basically turns into a flying cheese wheel is the best way I could describe it. It's an orange UFO looking thing that transforms into a mobile suit. And the face sculpt is nigh identical to the Gelgoog's. It even has a little snout. The only difference is it has a single mono eye, despite being a Federation suit, but that's Zeta Gundam for you. One of the things that this made me think of, though, is in Zeta Gundam, specifically the movies, the new translation movies, where it had the updated animation. There's the scene where Char, or Quattro Bagina, and Camille and Amuro are fighting the Ashamar, and they use the Rick Diaz's clay bazooka, and it uses like a shotgun type ammo, and it shoots the face of the Ashamar, and its like camera sensor like lens cracks open, and then three like the mono eye shuts off, and three smaller cameras like slide into place, roughly where these are. It made me think a lot of that. I can't help but wonder if that was maybe like a source of inspiration for that design. But yeah, this is just I really cannot tell you how much fun I had with this kit and just what a cool build process it was, especially the legs with the really cool fuel canister type kind of construction that the Xeon mobile suits have. I really, really, really like this HD line. I mean, all three of these mobile suits I've liked. I've enjoyed building quite a bit. I love the design language, but I think the Gelgoog is still my favorite. Like the it just highlights everything I like about this series' design language. So very affordable kit. I paid under $30. I think I paid 25. That's pretty normal for a high grade here in the US these days. Um, Got it at my local hobby shop, like I mentioned, and it is well worth it. It's a super fun kit. Can't recommend it enough. If you want to get a high grade, I mean, obviously the big ticket items are obviously the Gquuuuuux and the Red Gundam, being the kind of protagonist mobile suits of the series. But don't look over the Gelgoog. It may look generic, but I can promise you the build is anything but that, and it is just super fun. Um, any of the two variants, or what might be an inevitable third variant, I'm assuming, because we are getting a original White Gundam Federation colors version of this guy without the bits, and then there is the Endymion unit Gquuuuuux coming. But yeah, do not. I would say don't sleep on this guy. He's super cool, super fun kit. Um, Big thumbs up for me. So I'm uh, um I'm gonna go organize more things to take my mind off of the creatures in my walls and then the worms in the brain. I'll see you guys later.